Utah Symphony, a turning point for cultural appreciation in Utah. Utah Symphony helped shape cultural art in Utah. Utah did not have an organized orchestra when the pioneers began to settle in Utah. Many Mormons coming from Europe were already classical musicians. In 1857, Jonathan Grimshaw, secretary to the Deseret Philharmonic Society, wrote to the LDS British publication, The Millennial Star, begging for musicians migrating to Utah to bring sheet music with them. In 1892, a small group called the Salt Lake Symphony performed one concert. The symphony still performed during the Great Depression. From 1935 to 1940, the symphony gave over 1,000 concerts with about 350,000 people in attendance.
At this time, it really was just, it was an amateur orchestra, and so they were really volunteering. It was a community orchestra like any number of the community orchestras in town today. It didn't have any kind of association with the church or anything. It was its own thing. But they really kind of started calling it Utah Symphony in 1941.
The Utah State Institute of Fine Arts issued a brochure stating, "The Symphony Orchestra supplies the foundation for all musical development. A permanent organization is needed to give the community's talent a chance for growth. A symphony orchestra is needed as the basis for the production of opera and all forms of musical expression. A symphony orchestra is needed for enjoyment and for cultural stimulus." Maestro Maurice Abravanel was about to enter the cultural scene of Utah.
About 1944, 1945 was about when they said, okay, we're ready to get a full-time music director. The musicians still weren't really paid. They were only paid like very, very, very part-time. And for some reason, and even the history is a little bit vague, somehow we got Maurice Abravanel interested, who was this incredible conductor out in Europe, and he, because of the war, had come to New York and was conducting Broadway with like Kurt Weill.
In 1947, Maurice Abravanel brought real professionalism to the symphony.
And so he came to the symphony, and he took this amateur orchestra over a course of a couple of years. He would go daily to the legislature, got a lot of funding from the legislature. A lot of the funding that the legislature gives to the arts now really goes back to the lobbying that Maestro Abravanel did up at the legislature. And he took that orchestra, he made them full-time, and he kind of made it a cause of his for musicians in any venue, be they church musicians or musicians at other organizations, that they get paid their fair wages. And he would always try and go to meet with LDS church leadership, and you know, they were good friends, and he'd be like, you've got to pay those musicians in the Motab and the choirs, pianists, and the organists, which of course, you know, we don't do because that's a volunteer thing, but he worked really hard trying to get musicians their fair due. And so by making Utah Symphony this full-time orchestra, he took them from this community-based thing to being the organization that it is today.
Maurice Abravanel wanted to utilize local musicians over imported ones. Frances Darcher auditioned for the symphony in 1942 when she was 17 years old. She was hired by Maestro Abravanel and played the violin until she retired at age 87 after playing in the symphony for 69 years. Maurice Abravanel took the symphony out among the people, including performances at the state prison.
Because he used to take Utah Symphony all over the Intermountain West. He kind of had this goal of taking classical music to cowboys, and so they'd always talk about how there'd be all these cowboys in their concerts, and the thing they'd be amazed at most was how synchronized all the bows were by the violinists and things like that. Little do they know that the concert master actually marks what the bowing is, so they all go the same direction.
Maurice Abravanel helped the symphony gain worldwide fame through its recordings.
And I mean, his recordings that he did with the Utah Symphony, especially of the symphonies by Mahler, I mean, they're world famous. And his name is still known. People who know Utah Symphony today, it's because of Maestro Abravanel, and that's who they associate with us.
When asked about how the Utah audiences respond to the symphony, Maurice Abravanel said, When I see listeners moved to tears by the music of the masters, Beethoven's Missa, his 7th Symphony, I know then why I love Utah and Salt Lake City.
And Abravanel, I mean, I don't know if Utah Symphony, if the state of Utah, without what Abravanel did for the symphony, could support this full-time 52-week orchestra, because like I said, most of them are in cities much larger than we are, with a much larger donor base. But because we have this wonderful tradition of supporting art and culture in Utah, both from the legislature but also from the community, from the LDS Church, that we've really been able to be successful in a place where maybe we wouldn't be so successful. So I hate to think what the music scene in Utah would be like without Maurice Abravanel, honestly. Who knows where we would be.
A fun fact. The Tabernacle was its home for 32 years, but moved to Symphony Hall in 1979. It was renamed Abravanel Hall in 1993 in honor of Maurice Abravanel.
And so if you notice Abravanel Hall, this is kind of a cool thing. That it's kind of angled. If you've noticed, it points northeast. And so it's actually pointing to its old home of the Tabernacle.
The Utah Symphony gives back to Utah through new works and concerts.
We're always introducing new music. Our current maestro, Terry Fisher, has started a tradition of commissioning a new work every season. And so he's broadening the musical repertoire. And these are commissions that we usually go in on with other orchestras. And so we're adding pieces to the worldwide repertoire, which is really exciting.
I am reintroducing commissions into the Utah Symphony's repertoire to show that programming is not only about the past, it is also about the present and looking to the future. It was extremely crucial for me that we motivate composers to create in this century and support them as an essential part of the creative process. Terry Fisher, Music Director, 2013. Continuing programs such as the Vivace series and Lollipop concerts bring professional and unique music to Utah today.
I think on kind of our cultural life, our cultural heritage, is I have a saying where I like to say that the arts will change the world, because the arts teach us empathy and teach us to put ourselves in other people's shoes and learn about things we wouldn't learn about, experience feelings we may not experience in other ways. And so I think the Utah Symphony makes an impact on our personal histories as it impacts us through the power of music.
The Utah Symphony involved many people that wanted to see Utah become a wonderful and enriching place to live. The Utah legislature money allows the symphony to be one of the biggest symphonies in the world, even though our population is relatively small.
The Utah Symphony, beyond just the impact that it has on the community and on the economy, and being this amazing special thing, because we're one of only 14 orchestras in the country that are full-time, and we're only in a city with a population around 188,000 people. Then if you look at the full suburbs, it's about 2 million people. And most of these other full-time orchestras are in cities like New York City and Dallas and Los Angeles, San Francisco. And so it's amazing that we're a 52-week full-time orchestra.
The Utah Symphony continues to create turning points for the people in the entire state.
So what Utah does today for our history, especially for our cultural history, is we are the largest nonprofit in the state outside of, Intermountain Healthcare. Our budget is $17 million annually, so we're making an economic impact on the state of Utah. We're employing about 200 people between staff and musicians, and that's including our opera, because the Utah Symphony and Utah Opera are merged. We're one company. And that in itself is kind of a history trailblazer for the whole country, because we kind of started that trend. There's a few more now who have joined forces like we did.
Before the symphony, the world was not aware of the intelligent and creative people that live in Utah. It helped show the world that Utah's people value beautiful music.